General Hospital spoilers reveal that Port Charles is undergoing a simmering yet fierce wave of chaos, and at the eye of the storm lies one of the most explosive upheavals the town has ever witnessed. The collapse of the relationship between Brook and Lois. No longer just the usual mother-daughter squabbles, things have now veered far beyond the boundaries of ordinary pain, cutting deep into the already fractured foundation of their family. The truth about Joe's real identity has served as the catalyst that ignited years of suppressed emotions. Lois's decision to hide the fact that Gio is actually the biological son of Brook and Dante, a truth too profound and sacred to be taken lightly, has become an unforgivable shock in the eyes of everyone involved. And now, Lois's future is not merely clouded with uncertainty, it seems to be slowly disappearing, consumed by the consequences of her own calculated actions. Brook is no longer the young woman who once ran from responsibility, who avoided facing difficult decisions. Having spent years torn between her Quartermaine heritage and her personal desire for freedom, she has matured, learning to stand firm amid the family's storms. But no lesson could have prepared her for the truth, that the son she gave up in anguish and regret has been living under the same roof with her all along. No warnings. No signs, just a raw truth uncovered by a chain of coincidences, accompanied by a sense of betrayal that nothing can soothe. Lois, once seen as a symbol of loyalty, fierce personality, and unconditional family love, is now rejected by her own daughter. And not with a heated argument, but with a decisive act, Brook bluntly asked her mother to leave the Quartermaine mansion. To leave her life, to leave Port Charles. It was a moment that the entire town felt, a silent explosion, a rupture as devastating as a tornado without needing to shout. Joe's presence now serves as a living catalyst for the spreading trauma. Every step he takes, every word he says, forces Brook to confront the past she thought was buried. And the most painful part is realizing that she lived beside her son without knowing it, shared her most precious moments with him as a sister, a friend, rather than as a mother. Every memory now becomes a stab wound, as she looks back and sees that her chance to be a mother was stolen by the very woman who gave her life. And it's not just Brook who is suffering. Dante, a man who has always prioritized family, is also crushed with disappointment upon discovering that he has a biological son he never knew existed. Joe's existence changes everything in his life, and looking back, he sees years stolen, father-son moments erased by a single calculated decision made by Lois. Lois, who once believed she was protecting everyone by keeping silent, now realizes that it was her silence that destroyed everything. She hasn't just lost her daughter. She's lost the trust of those who once considered her an indispensable part of the family. Sonny, Olivia, Ned, Tracy, all are disappointed, some even furious. And most heart-wrenching of all is Gio himself, caught in an emotional whirlwind, unsure of who to blame, who to trust, or even who he is anymore in a family where truth has become a rare commodity. Lois's calculation, whether born out of love or fear, has now gone too far. She once thought she could hold everything together, save Brook from pain. But now she must face not just temporary anger, but a chilling indifference, a distance that no apology or late tears can bridge. The question now is, where will Lois go? Is there still a place for her in the world she was once an essential part of? Does Port Charles still need someone like Lois, someone who loved with all her heart, yet hid the truth with equal force? The obsession is no longer about who Joe's parents are. It has become a symbol of how secrets, no matter how well-intentioned, can destroy an entire emotional ecosystem. A family once riddled with conflict has now been torn apart by an undeniable truth. And from those ruins, one question echoes through Port Charles: who will be the next to speak their truth? And is there anyone left with the courage to forgive? The explosion is spreading. And no one, not even Lois, can escape the consequences of what was hidden for too long. Because sometimes, it's not the liar who causes the most damage, it's the one who stays silent when they should have spoken up. Ned and Olivia, who have long straddled the line between family tradition and personal freedom, are now standing firmly and publicly with Brook like never before. Gone are the neutral words of caution or silent forbearance out of fear of hurting others. Ned and Olivia now openly support Brook Lynn's brave confrontation of not just the truth about Geo, but of a deeply entrenched system of deceit and secrecy within the Quartermaine household. While their support gives Brook Lynn newfound strength, it also unleashes a wave of uncontrollable consequences, as everything begins to spiral beyond anyone's control. The story has evolved beyond the question of Joe's parentage into a more complex narrative, one of ethics, trust, and the limits of concealing the truth. Ned, who once hurt those he loved through his rigidity, is now the first to affirm that Brook Lynn is right. He will no longer tolerate Lois placing family honor below personal secrets. Olivia, driven by maternal instinct and a compassionate heart, cannot accept that her son Dante was robbed of fatherhood due to a misjudged act cloaked in the guise of love. Yet their public support is intensifying the divide, as cracks within the family widen beyond the immediate parties. Those who once stayed neutral are now choosing sides. Those who once remained silent are now speaking up. And every action, every word, is now open to interpretation, as either rebellion or complicity. A new dynamic is emerging. A silent but weighty division, not born of anger, but of trust irreparably broken. One by one, people are making decisions deemed crazy, not because they are irrational, but because they're driven by unrestrained emotion. Brook Lynn, empowered by her parents' support, begins to question the events of the past she once overlooked. She starts to re-examine every sign, every small detail concerning Geo, and discovers there's more than Lois ever admitted. Unsent letters, orchestrated encounters, edited memories designed to preserve a singular narrative. And when those pieces are put together, a new truth begins to emerge, that Lois's concealment might not have been solely out of love, but possibly a calculated effort to maintain control, to shape Brook Lynn's future according to her own vision. This leads to a haunting realization, the loss of autonomy. Brook Lynn is not just angry about being kept from her son, she's furious at realizing her entire life may have been manipulated before she even had the power to resist. And in that obsession, she begins to look at everything around her with new eyes. She questions everyone's motives, even those closest to her. She begins to interrogate not just Lois, but the entire family system she once admired. And with Ned and Olivia, two pillars of the Quartermaine legacy, standing with her, this is no longer a conflict between mother and daughter. It's a battle for the right to know the truth, the right to be a parent, and the right to determine one's own life. Port Charles is no longer a town of secrets hidden in the dark. It has become a stage where every concealed truth is being dragged into the light. And at the center of it all is Brook Lynn, trying to redefine her identity, her relationships, and her trust, while grappling with the heavy consequences of the twisted decisions others made for her. Ned and Olivia may support her, but the truth is that no one can shield Brook Lynn from the heartbreak, the pain, and the shattered trust she feels every time she looks at Geo, the son she could have loved from the very beginning, had the truth not been replaced by misguided kindness. And from here, there are only two paths: either forgiveness emerges like a rare miracle, or everyone continues to sink deeper into the abyss, where no one can save anyone, not even themselves, from the consequences they've set in motion. The story of Geo is gradually becoming one of the most haunting and tangled tragedies ever to unfold in Port Charles, not only because of the nature of the truth that has been revealed, but also because of the aftermath it has unleashed, tearing through the emotional lives, trust, and family structure of the Quartermaines. With a young heart longing to be understood and to belong, Geo lived his brief life never knowing his true origins. He was an artist, a pure soul who loved beauty, lived in music, connected with the community, and brought a sense of calm to a town constantly gripped by chaos and power struggles. But when the truth came to light, that he wasn't just an outsider who had entered the Quartermaine family, but in fact, was their blood, the biological son of Brook Lynn and Dante, Joe's entire world was turned inside out. He didn't react with loud anger or an outburst of tears. Instead, he absorbed the shock in quiet, profound pain. To Gio, the most terrifying part wasn't that the truth had been kept from him, it was the realization that the people he had trusted, the ones he had considered family in an abstract way, were in fact his actual family. And they had never told him. Brook Lynn, whom he saw as an older sister, the one who hugged him after every performance, cared for him when he had a fever, stood by him when he was lost, turned out to be his birth mother. A title he had never once called her by. Dante, the steadfast man who encouraged him to never fear dreaming, was the father who had never held his son with a father's love. And that truth shattered Joe's sense of direction. He could no longer distinguish what was real and what was a lie in his own life. That heartbreak soon turned into action. In a decision that shocked everyone and allowed no interference, Gio chose to leave Port Charles with Lois, the only person, in that moment of chaos, he felt he could trust. Not because Lois was blameless. Not because she was perfect. But because she was the only one who embraced him when everything fell apart. The one who had been complicit in the concealment. But also the only one who didn't drag him into the cycle of blame. She had stayed silent, believing it would protect him. And now, even knowing it was a mistake, she was still willing to walk away from the people she loved in order to take Gio with her, not to keep him, but to give him time to breathe and rediscover himself. That decision didn't just bring Brook Lynn to her knees, it threw the entire Quartermaine family into unprecedented disarray. From a family already fractured by fame, power, and generations of inheritance disputes, they now faced a much deeper emotional loss than any fight over legacy. Brook Lynn, who had summoned all her courage to reclaim her son by telling the truth, now had to confront the bitter reality that her act of bravery had also cost her Gio, again. She didn't lose him to a kidnapping. She lost him to broken trust, twisted memories, and the interference of too many adults who had ruined something that should have been protected by pure love. Dante, meanwhile, was drowning in guilt. As a police officer, he could rationalize everything. But as a father, he couldn't accept that the son he had never held, had never heard say, "Dad," had left before he even had a chance to make amends. He spent sleepless nights flipping through Brook Lynn's old journals, searching for traces of the truth, as if somewhere within those pages lay the answer to the question that haunted him. Why did they let this happen? The Quartermaine family could no longer uphold their proud, unified image. Ned and Olivia, despite trying to support their daughter, were paralyzed watching everything fall apart before their eyes. Family dinners became suffocatingly silent. Meetings at ELQ turned tense, not from profit concerns, but from a shared emotional exhaustion. And worst of all, the blame began, quiet and cold. Every glance, every seemingly harmless word became a spark thrown onto a candle threatening to explode into flame. Port Charles had never seen a departure leave behind so many scars. Gio didn't disappear. But his absence became an open wound, an echo of words never spoken in time. Life went on, but no one was the same. Brook Lynn forced a smile on stage but always had red eyes afterward. Dante laughed with colleagues but paused every time he saw children passing by. Olivia prayed silently before bed. Ned stared at the family photo, wondering when, or if, they would ever stand together again. As for Lois, she took Gio away, fully aware that what she was trying to protect was only temporary. She didn't have the right to keep him forever. But she knew that when a heart breaks, it needs a place to heal, even if it's just a small home, far from where everything fell apart. And there, she hoped, one day, Gio would be strong enough to come back, not because someone told him to, but because he chose to. Until that day, Port Charles will live in the silence of a storm that has passed, leaving behind wounds that can never be stitched. Lois and Joe's departure from General Hospital was no longer a private decision between two people seeking peace amidst the storm, but rather the clearest symbol of a new wave of pressure and instability rising throughout Port Charles. When they left the town, the mother carrying the weight of accumulated regret and the son carrying a broken heart from the truth revealed too late, the entire community, once their home, began to feel the collapse of an emotional order that had always been fragile. This departure left not only an empty space but also a vivid testament that while truth is necessary, when revealed at the wrong time, it can devastate trust, relationships, and everything a family once tried to preserve. The psychological pressure now spread like an uncontrollable oil spill. Lois being pushed to her limits, forced to leave with Gio, was not only the consequence of a personal decision but also the product of years of accumulated factors: secrecy, silence, the failure of communication across generations, and especially the fear of confronting true emotions. Lois didn't leave because she wanted to abandon her responsibilities, she left because the town, her loved ones, and the relationships she once thought she could heal, now became the very forces pushing her out of the most intimate circle, no longer the mother, the grandmother, the keeper of connections, but merely the bearer of the weight of truth. As for Gio, the young heart full of emotion and a longing to be loved, he was now thrust into the role of the central figure in a crisis he never wanted to be a part of. His name, Giovanni, no longer represented music, peace, and the artistic soul he once embodied, but was now associated with whispered conversations in hospital hallways, awkward glances from strangers, and the discomfort of those who were once close to him. He became a symbol of what had been hidden, and his presence forced everyone to confront the wounds they had caused or contributed to. Thus, he chose to leave, not to run away, but to find himself in a place not surrounded by expectations, secrets, and pitying eyes. And then, that departure became the final straw in Brook Lynn's mind, the young woman who had once bravely faced the truth, who had fought to be called by the most sacred name, Mother. Brook Lynn didn't cry in front of everyone. She didn't scream or blame anyone. But in her eyes, in every small gesture, there was an undercurrent of intense, silent emotion. The new obsession she now faced was no longer the pain of being deceived by her mother, but the sense of a second loss, this time caused by her own belief that the truth would save everything. This obsession wasn't just a mood, it became a part of every moment Brook Lynn lived. When she passed Joe's room, now empty, every small item became proof of a life she could have touched but didn't have time to hold on to. Those words returned in every restless sleep, in every nightmare that left Brook Lynn waking up with a racing heart and a feeling of emptiness she couldn't fill. And the scariest part was that this obsession didn't stop. It didn't just haunt Brook Lynn. It started to creep into the minds of everyone in the Quartermaine family, those who had once thought they could change things through silence, through protection, through delaying the truth. Now, they had to face the consequences. Gio and Lois's departure was the beginning of an unfillable void. Every family meal became cold. Every conversation about the future lacked the presence of the boy who had once been the unexpected joy in that vast house. From all of this, a new feeling began to surge powerfully in Port Charles, an overwhelming sense of losing control. No one knew how to fix things. No one knew how to bring Gio back. And, more importantly, no one knew what to say to Brook Lynn when she looked at them with empty eyes, as though she were looking through them, retreating into a memory where she was still the hopeful mother. Unscathed by the truth, untouched by the obsession that she had allowed her son to leave again. Lois and Gio may be on their way to a quieter place, but Port Charles was no longer quiet. Everything had changed. And in that chaos, people could only hope that one day, when hearts healed, when words that couldn't be spoken were finally said at the right time, when the obsession faded into the past, Brook Lynn, Gio, and Lois might find each other once more, not through titles, but through real, unconditional love, without secrets. But until that day comes, Port Charles will live with the haunting of loss, and Brook Lynn will bear the heaviest burden, not because she was wrong, but because she was braver than anyone else. And it was that bravery that hurt her more deeply than anyone could have imagined. The Quartermaine family, which has already been shaken multiple times by internal power struggles, Long-held secrets and generational differences now stands on the brink of complete disintegration. No longer are there just small cracks that can be mended, but deep fractures that stretch from the heart to the very foundation. Everything that once defined this family, tradition, reputation, the loosely held but still existing bond, is now quietly but intensely wavering as the very people at its center begin to lose faith in each other. And at that moment, one of the most significant adjustments begins to take place, not from the outside, but from the very heart of two people who once seemed the closest, Ned and Brook Lynn. Brook Lynn has been through far too much in too short a time. From discovering that she is Joe's biological mother, to losing her son once again when Gio chose to leave with Lois. She has sacrificed everything, from her emotions to her pride, just to face a truth no one could help her fix. But what hurts her even more than the loss is the feeling that those she loves most truly don't understand her. And Ned, the father who was once her solid support, has now become part of the burden she is struggling to carry. A nameless distance is forming between them, an intense tension that needs no words, but which everyone can feel clearly. The so-called adjustment in the relationship between Ned and Brook Lynn is not just about disagreements or the cold silence at family meals. It's a series of confrontations in which neither of them can look the other in the eye. It's moments when Ned tries to say something to soothe her, but Brook Lynn only responds with a blank stare. It's short words full of bitterness, steps taken away from a room without looking back. And all of this is slowly building into an obsession, not a story between father and daughter, but between two people buried under expectations, disappointment, and an unnamed pain. Ned, deep down, always believed that he had done everything possible to protect his daughter. He thought that standing by Brook Lynn and supporting her and exposing the truth was proof of his love and respect for her. But he didn't realize that throughout this process, he had repeatedly, unintentionally, diminished Brook Lynn's emotions, placing logic and the family's reputation above the pain she was enduring. He was so focused on solving the situation that he forgot that Brook Lynn didn't need someone to fix everything, she needed someone who would listen, empathize, and cry with her. Brook Lynn, on the other hand, no longer has the strength to distinguish right from wrong. Every attempt to pull herself together only leaves her more exhausted. Every time Ned says something, no matter how well-intentioned, it makes her feel imposed upon, judged, pushed into the mold of a Quartermaine woman who must be strong, rational, and overcome things without weakness. And this is what has created a smoldering madness between father and daughter, not an explosion of anger, but a silent war, where every glance carries pressure. Every word becomes a weapon that wounds the other. This situation is slowly spreading throughout the entire Quartermaine house. The other members begin to see the coldness between Ned and Brook Lynn. But no one dares to intervene. Olivia tries to stay neutral but grows increasingly weary of being a bridge in a battle where neither side is willing to compromise. Tracy remains silent, but her cold, assessing gaze every time Brook Lynn leaves the room shows that she's evaluating everything in her own way, as if the young woman is complicating matters instead of preserving tradition. With each passing day, the family's disintegration is not only evident in tense conversations, but in the thick atmosphere where no one feels that the house is a safe place anymore. The obsession that Brook Lynn carries is not just the pain of losing a child, but the sense of being lost within her own family, the very place that should have been her greatest comfort. She looks around and sees everyone trying to behave properly, using logic to protect the Quartermaine name, while her heart is shattering into pieces. And when she sees Ned, the one who should have been the first to stand by her unconditionally, choosing to act according to the mold, she realizes that no one can save her from the feeling of being abandoned anymore. Not once, but twice, first by Gio, and now by her very own father. Amid all of this, the adjustment that is happening is not meant to heal, but to re-establish the emotional position between the members, and the result is a widening gap, hearts growing farther apart. And a smoldering madness rising like an undercurrent preparing to drown everything. The Quartermaine family is not collapsing with a loud crash, but is slowly cracking with small fractures. Starting from the place that once seemed the strongest, the bond between father and daughter. And if no one reaches out to Brook Lynn's heart with genuine care instead of imposition, one day soon, she will leave, carrying a broken heart, leaving behind a family that once prided itself on its unity, now reduced to people living under the same roof but no longer trusting one another.